Yeah, Kelly, these antibiotics are often prescribed for minor infections when there are other treatments available. A Baltimore lawyer tells me, on top of the crippling side effects, the majority of people who've been harmed by these drugs have no recourse under the law.
These drugs are overused, overprescribed, and overmarketed.
Attorney Daniel Miller is different from everyone else who spoke up at an FDA meeting earlier this month. He hasn't been personally harmed by antibiotics called fluoroquinolones, known under brand names Levaquin and Cipro, but he knows many people who have.
I got involved with some grassroots organizations, got to know a lot of people over the years, and heard hundreds of stories of people that not just had tendon rupture, but had all these other cluster of debilitating side effects.
The FDA is debating changing the labels on these powerful antibiotics, specifically whether they should continue to be approved for sinus infections, bronchitis, and urinary tract infections. Miller likened the drugs to using an A-bomb to kill a housefly.
People are being hurt every day, and it's so tragic because it's unnecessary. There are other treatments that can be used, and people are getting badly injured for no good reason.
In the antibiotic area,
Dr. John Powers agrees. He's a leading expert on antimicrobial drugs and a clinical researcher. He says quinolones are effective against certain life-threatening conditions, but existing studies show that the drugs do not perform any better than placebos in treating minor infections.
we're giving people excess side effects when they don't need them to begin with for self-resolving illnesses. And secondly, by spreading antibiotic resistance, we're eliminating the benefits of these drugs for the sickest people who really do need them.
Miller says federal law does little to protect people who are hurt by a pharmaceutical drug. The overwhelming majority of people take generic fluoroquinolones. A 2011 Supreme Court decision ruled that a patient harmed by a generic drug cannot sue its manufacturer. That's because generic drug companies are required to use the exact same label as the brand name version.
People who are hurt by generic drugs have no rights, whereas if your prescription was filled with a brand name drug, you would. So due to that anomaly, many people have no ability to bring a case.
Advocates support updating the warning labels on fluoroquinolones to include additional severe side effects linked to the drugs. But Dr. Powers says that still isn't enough. Even if labels are changed, doctors don't read them and patients don't see them.
There needs to be something that goes beyond just labeling in terms of education of both clinicians and of patients. And this goes beyond just for quinolone antibiotics. It's a bigger issue in general of educating clinicians and patients about the appropriate usage of antibiotics.
The FDA is seriously considering a rule change that would allow generic drug manufacturers to update their own product labels when a safety issue is identified. Now they have to wait for the FDA to approve a label change. Now, generic drug manufacturers are very much against this change as it could open them up to potential failure to warn lawsuits.